There we go. Okay, we are recording. Let's pray. Precious Lord and Savior Jesus, what a joy it is to study your word, and especially now today, this book of Esther. Help us as you teach us many things. What a contemporary book Esther continues to be for us today. Thank you for the Holy Spirit in giving us the wisdom, the understanding to know your word, not only what it taught back when it was written, but also through the ages and now for us today. Help us to learn, help us to grow, help our faith to be stronger, and help us to be bold witnesses to you. Not ashamed of our faith, not ashamed of the fact that we are your children, but bold in that faith and trust in you. Be with us, Lord Jesus, as you always are when we are reading and studying your word. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Let me share the screen as far as Esther goes. And hopefully you have Esther and should be the lesson 1 and 2 as we do this for today. Good. All right. So let me just ask you, let's just start off with, I'm going to ask you some questions, not so much that you give me the answers now, but I'm setting Esther up for you, okay? So the first question that I ask you here is, what do you know? How come this isn't doing it? All right. You're going to be trouble for me here? What are you doing? It worked before. There we go. Okay. What do you think about the book of Esther? As you hear about the book of Esther, what comes to mind? Okay, doesn't mention God ever in the book of Esther. Okay, what do you think of that? Doesn't belong in the Bible. Doesn't mention God. All right, we'll talk some more about that. What else do you know or do you think about when you hear the book of Esther? During captivity, all right, so you think about the captivity and so on, okay? She's beautiful, all right? What's that? Purim. Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one. Purim, okay, good. She's beautiful. Most girls like that book. You know, what's your favorite book of the Bible? Oh, Esther. Because they dream about being a queen, right? I think. All right. So what do you know about the biblical story during the exile, you had said? Good. Anything else? Purim, you had talked about. Yeah. Anything else? We'll be talking more about this as we go along. Okay. That's still not working. Oh, because I'm unplugged. Try it again. Aha, there we go. Okay. Then also, how does this story compare with other stories in the Bible? As you think of the story of Esther, is there any other Bible story that you can think of that kind of parallels the story of Esther? Ruth, in what way does Ruth and Esther parallel? Okay, both of them subservient to the Lord, both of them did the right thing, all right? Okay, rose above their initial circumstances. All right, that's good. That's good. Both of them women. All right, yeah, that kind of helps too. All right, I'm going to suggest another Bible story later on to you that I think is, but all right, we could do Ruth. Sure. All right, that's good. And why is Ruth included in the canon of Scripture since it never mentions God? Oh, it reflects God's principles, all right, but 1st and 2nd Maccabees reflect God's principles. I'll play devil's advocate for a minute. The Gospel of Thomas reflects God's principles, some of them. Well,
this also showed.
Oh, what is it?
It showed how God saved his people.
Okay, it showed how God saved his people. Boy, 1st and 2nd Maccabees shows how God saved his people. I'll just toy with you a little bit here. All right, you're right. All right, 10 questions to ponder. And again, these are pondering questions. What I like to do, as I was studying and getting ready for this, I came across these questions and I hadn't thought about them. So I thought, well, this is a good way to kind of introduce Esther. First of all, All right. And so, Kim, you mentioned it. Why is the name of God never mentioned in the book of Esther? That is pretty ironic, isn't it? Okay. Just kind of, that's a thinker question. All right. Second one, why is prayer never mentioned in the book? Fasting is, but not prayer. Isn't that kind of a key in the scriptures? Prayer? Okay. Never the mention of God, never the mention of prayer. Why does the New Testament never mention or refer to anything in the book of Esther? You know how the New Testament oftentimes Matthew will record, as it's written, as it's written, as it's written. Never Esther. Book of Esther gives the historical basis for the Feast of Purim. You mentioned that, yes. Why is this feast never mentioned in the New Testament? Why is the Feast of Purim never mentioned? We'll talk about it later on. These are all thinker questions for you right now, okay? Calvin wrote a lot of commentaries. Luther, he wrote a lot of commentaries. Why did neither one of them ever write a book, a commentary on them? And why did Martin Luther say that he wished the book of Esther had never existed? He put 1st, 2nd Maccabees and Esther together and said, I wish that they never existed. Kind of interesting. Why is the book of Esther the #1 favorite of all the Old Testament books among the Jews? Feast of Purim. Yes. And I think we'll understand why when we get to the Feast of Purim. That's going to be a little bit later on as we get down there. All right. There's 10 of these. Why do later Greek translations add almost as many verses as there are in Esther? All right. So there's 157 verses in the Hebrew text, Masoretic text. All right. And the Greek text, the Septuagint that came about later on, they have 107 verses added to Esther. Interesting. And try so hard to change our understanding of the earliest text. That's a whole story, study in itself. We're not going to go there. It's just let you know. Since the book concerns Jews living outside the promised land, why is there never any mention of, are these big ones, God's law? Never any mention of the Holy Land? Never any mention of Jerusalem nor the temple. Aren't those some good questions? This is a book in the Bible, and this is a book about the exile, and it's a book about God's people. All right, you got it? Why are we so easily inclined to look upon King Ahasuerus as evil and to view Mordecai and Esther as godly? Were Mordecai and Esther godly?
No.
I'll leave that with you just to ponder. And we'll talk some more about that. All right, these are kind of ponder questions. Why are we so happy to see Esther on the throne, even though she was misrepresented her nationality and her kin, even though she's living outside of the promised land, even though she's married to a heathen king, and the winner of a contest which included?
Sleeping with
Oh no, sleeping with the king. All right, these are 10, I think, some pretty good thinker questions about it, right? To kind of get us thinking about Esther. And I love this visual, all right? Book of Esther, when God seems absent, when God seems absent. And I don't know who designed that, but I think that they hit the nail on the head pretty well as we're going to talk about Esther. All right, great. The overall message from all 10 of those questions here is this, and I'd like to start off with this, and we'll talk some more about it. Every book of the Bible, who's the hero?
God.
Moses, Abraham, Jacob, Noah. No! Every book of the Bible, the hero is Jesus, because the answer is always Jesus.
Jesus.
What happens when we see Esther and we focus on Esther with the book of Esther? Or what happens when we focus on Mordecai in the book of Esther? Or what happens if we focus on the bad guy, Haman? We miss Jesus. Don't miss Jesus. So those 10 opening kind of thinker questions for us, I'm hoping that kind of turns our thoughts a little bit away from focusing on the wrong thing, but really focusing on how does this teach me, or what does this teach me about Jesus? Okay, even though the mention of God or prayer are never mentioned in the book of Esther, how does that help me to know something about Jesus and his word? Good. One more. or one more of a number of introductory things. As I was getting ready for this, I said to Conley, I said, Conley, do you know how many banquets there are in the book of Esther? She said, no. I said, well, there's 10. She says, well, it's obviously not during COVID. That was Conley's. I thought that was a good one. All right. Yeah. But this is amazing. There's 10 banquets in these short little chapters that Esther has. And there's 3 banquets in the first chapter. We'll look at that. All right. Just kind of some interesting things. Here's all the banquets that are there. Just we'll unpack them as we go through here. But we've got all kinds of banquets pretty much with the royalty until we get down to chapter 8 and we get the Feast of Purim. And we have then that the Jews are celebrating. And we've got some good reasons for banquets, some bad reasons for banquets, and all of that. But anyway, just I like to eat. So banquets are kind of nice, you know, and so a good reminder for us there. All right. What are we talking about? We're talking about the area of Susa, Babylonia, if you would. All right. Susa is the place where they were. Babylonia, you can see Babylon and so on, but Susa is the capital there where they are. Now, this is, remember we did Ezra chapters 1 through 6, and then there's that 60-year period, and we're in the 60-year period where Esther comes in, and then Ezra's going to come, and then Nehemiah's going to come, right? So 60 years before, or about then, what did Zerubbabel want to do? Zerubbabel in Ezra chapters 1 through 6. Cyrus said, let all the Jews return to their promised land. Let all the Jews go back and build their temple, right? So all the Jews returned. Not, do you remember with Ezra? There was really a small amount of the Jews who returned. Just not a spoiler alert, but just to let you know. So we've got Zerubbabel brings back some of the Jews. We hear about Esther now still over in Susa, all right? Ezra, chapter 7, 8, 9 of Ezra, we'll get there. He brings back some of the Jews. Nehemiah, later on, when he comes, he brings back some of the Jews, but a lot of the Jews stay in Susa, okay? And so, interesting, here we have this story of Esther. So what's happening over in Susa? What's happening, you know, in the bigger area of the world? Again, I'm a visual guy. I like maps, and I like to see what we're talking about. But this was quite a journey to go from Jerusalem, from Susa to Jerusalem and so on. Months of walking, months of going back and forth. All right, so let's get into chapter 1. Esther chapter 1. God's hidden hand. Here's another visual that someone else has used that I'm borrowing. And the fruit of pride he uses here, or she, I'm not sure if it's a man or a woman who did these slides, but pretty helpful. All right. Esther, chapter 1. We have it? And I hope you have the worksheet or the handout sheet just to kind of help us out as we go through here. This is what happened during the time of Xerxes, the Xerxes who ruled over 127 provinces stretching from India to Kush. All right, so let me come back to that. This is a big ruler, all right? Keep in mind, we had the Babylonian captivity. Then we have now Cyrus came in. This is Ezra again, remember? So during Ezra, we have Cyrus came in with the Medes and the Persians and overthrew the Babylonians. So now there's no longer Babylonian kingdom. Now it's the Medes and the Persians. Later on, Alexander the Great's going to come in with the Greeks, and he's going to overthrow the Medes and the Persians. And then later on, the Romans are going to come in and overthrow the Greeks. Okay, so here we've got the big kind of the world ruler here is Xerxes. Now, he wants to set this up for Esther because how does Esther compare to Xerxes? She's an orphan. She has no mom or dad. She's adopted by her uncle or her cousin. And, you know, she has no status whatsoever. How about Xerxes? He's the top of the top, right? 127 provinces and so on. All right. So just kind of interesting here as we go through that. So this Xerxes who ruled over all those stretching from India to Kush, At that time, King Xerxes reigned from his royal throne in the citadel of Susa. All right. And in the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his nobles and officials. Here's the first banquet. Look on your sheet, would you? Look on your sheet that I gave to you here. The book of Esther, while not once mentioning God's name, nevertheless gives clear evidence of God's providential rule in world history. It shows that everything God does is in the interest of his gracious will and purpose, of course. During Esther's time, God's people, the people of Israel, were scattered throughout the Persian Empire. All right, yeah. The empire stretched from Greece to the west, to India to the east. Ethiopia was on its southern boundary and Assyria on its northern boundary. Big area. Got it? Sizable number of Jews lived in the Persian capital of Susa. That's what we're talking about. Persia was ruled by Ahasuerus. His other name was Xerxes. Good, keep that in mind. Ahasuerus, Xerxes. All right, both of those. A king who was quite egotistical, temperamental, ruthless, and a womanizer. He should have put that in here. All right, quite a womanizer. And that's going to be pretty evident as we go along here. Now, verse 3, which I just read to you here, this banquet. Here's some background history. In the 3rd year of his reign, Ahasuerus or Xerxes gave a feast. The Greek historian Herodotus reports that Ahasuerus devoted 5 years to planning his invasion of Greece with the largest army and navy ever assembled. The banquet mentioned in verse 2 could have been a planning meeting for the invasion. So here he gets all his officers together and he feeds them well and he treats them well. He's got this banquet going on and getting them ready to follow him into war. Makes some sense. All right, just some nice history that's there. Good. Verse 4. For a full 180 days, that's half a year. That's 6 months. For 6 months, he displayed the vast wealth of his kingdom and the splendor and glory of his majesty. Keep that in mind when he calls for Vashti to come before him. All right. What's his whole purpose of doing this for 180 days? Look at how wealthy I am. Look at all that I have. Look at how influential I am. Got it? Okay. I feel sorry for Vashti. I'll be very honest with you about that when we get there. All right. So 6 months. When these days were over, he gives another banquet. Do you catch it there? Verse 5. The king gave a banquet lasting 7 days in the enclosed garden of the king's palace for who? Everybody. Yeah. So here he's been whining and dining his military leaders and so on. 180 days, he shows all of his wealth. And now he's going to include everybody here, from the least to the greatest, who were in the citadel of Susa. The garden was beautiful, white and blue linen, fastened with cords of white linen and purple. Why are they telling us all this?
To impress us.
Yeah, you even find out the decorations and so on. Sure. He's pretty wealthy. He's trying to influence his people. He's really trying to make an impression on them and so on. Yeah. What'd you say at home? Somebody answered on the computer. All right. Guess not.
I think it was Sarah or Clara.
Yeah, I thought it was Clara. What'd you say, Clara?
She's
Well,
gone.
no, I'm still here.
All right, good. Stay with us then. That's great.
I just think he wants to impress.
He wants to impress. You got it. Wine was served, I'm in verse 7. Wine was served in goblets. How big is a goblet? All right. So you getting this party size? Is that what you said? Hey. All right. Yes, party size. All right. Each one different from the other. And the royal wine was abundant in keeping with the king's liberality. By the king's command, each guest was allowed to drink in his own way. How long is this? 7 days.
7 days.
Each one is allowed to drink in his own way, for the king instructed all the wine stewards to serve each man what he wished. So what do you think is happening here? There's a lot of wine being consumed, right? All right, nobody's drunk. All right, it's not talking about any drunkenness. All right, but there's a lot. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah, another way of showing, I'm just going to say it so that the folks online can get it. Another way of showing how, what was the word you used? Say it again. Ostentatious. That wasn't Conley's word. All right. Yes. And that was a better word. All right. One of the ways of the ostentatiousness, all right, of this was every goblet was hand fashioned, was in gold, and so on. There was no mass production of it, and so on. Yeah. All right. The best of it. Yes. Okay. Paul Beiner. Okay, all right. So this excavation in Susa and so on, the extravagance, that's another good word. The extravagance, all right, of the palace in Susa. All right, great. Very good. All right. That was a rabbit hole, wasn't it? Let's get back on here. All right. By the king's command, so they're all doing this. Queen Vashti, verse 9, good for her, also gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes. Now, how fancy was her banquet? How much wine did they drink? All right, isn't that just kind of interesting? It really pushes, high what King Xerxes is doing, and good old Queen Vashti here, she's having a banquet too. All right, very nice. For the women, of course, the men wouldn't have been, the men would have been in their banquet, the women in their banquet. Oh, the writer didn't get in there. Oh, I see. Okay, all right. You think the writer was at this banquet, you think? Well, it was for everybody. Yeah, maybe so. All right. So the writer must have lived during this time, or did the writer write it afterwards? You're right. We don't know. Yeah, all right. But all right. Very good. On the seventh day, when King Xerxes was in high spirits from wine, all right, you can kind of understand that, right? He commanded the 7 eunuchs who served him, and that's their names. You can pronounce them if you'd like. Verse 11, to bring before him Queen Vashti wearing her royal crown in order to, to show off her beauty, to display her beauty to the people and nobles, for she was lovely to look at. Well, I don't doubt that. All right. But to display her? Oh. But when the attendants delivered the king's command, Queen Vashti refused to come. Then the king became furious and burned with anger and cut off her head, and she was dead forever. Fortunately not. All right. Fortunately not. But well, I don't know. Do you think she had too much wine? I think she didn't. I think she was in her right mind, and King Xerxes was a little on the tipsy side. That's what I'm guessing. All right. But, here we have. So all these men, let me set it up for you. All these men have been drinking wine for 7 days, and they are merry with wine. And so now the king says, I'm going to bring in my beautiful wife, and I'm going to show her off to you. Not a good idea for any husband to do. Conley, would you like for me to do that to you? Probably not. Who's this guy? Archie Bunker. Archie Bunker and Edith. What do you know about Archie Bunker?
Chauvinist.
She's no beauty queen?
I asked you about Archie. Don't tell me about it, Edith. All right. What'd you say? Oh, I hope you're sarcastic. All right. She said he's very well-mannered. No. He is extremely opinionated about what?
Everything.
Well, okay, yeah, about everything. All right. But particularly about women. I want to talk about women. What does he think about Edith? He puts her down all the time. Yeah, very, very good. So with this story about Xerxes and Vashti, what I wanted to talk to you about is a very biblical term and a very biblical thing that this world has totally messed up. So what's the difference between subjection and submission? There's major differences. Let me just tell you that to begin with, all right? So what's the difference between subjection and submission?
Is somebody talking?
Okay, subjection is forcible, you said. Okay, what'd you say? I'm sorry. At
I
home?
was going to say submission is voluntary, subjection is not voluntary.
Okay, submission is voluntary, subjection is not voluntary. Yeah, very, very good. Okay, good, good. All right. Subjection is obey or else. And submission is, isn't that a pretty picture? Got the little pinkies together. Yeah, wedding rings together and so on, right? You know, we're in this together. It's a oneness and a love. We Lutherans would talk about law or gospel, right? That subjection is you obey or else, and submission is we are going to do this together. I'm concerned about you, you're concerned about me. We do things carefully. All right. And so what a great example for today for husbands and wives, but also for men and women, of just how men view women and how women view men. And, you know, we got all the extremes that are there. So let me come back to Ephesians 5, all right, as far as subjection or submission. Be very careful then how you live. I love starting off with this in Ephesians 5. It talks about husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church, so on later on. But it starts off with this. Be very careful how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. What's the beginning of wisdom? The knowledge of God. The knowledge of God is the beginning of wisdom. From Proverbs? The fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord. I knew that wasn't quite right. Thanks. The fear of the Lord. We should fear, love, and trust in God. The respect of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Good. And not worldly wisdom. And then, of course, it talks about submit to one another. So it's not just the women submitting to the men. It's not just the wife submitting to the husband, but it's the husband and wife submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. There's no submission going on with Xerxes ever as we go through here. But there's a lot of subjection. And when we see Esther, keep that in mind. You know, did Esther submit or was she subjected? Let's look at that when we get to that. Good. And so we have this, how is it that God desires Xerxes and husbands, all right, and other people to do? To husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Of course, it's all about that. And when we see it not happening, how destructive, how very, very difficult that is. All right, good. So here we got it. Full 180 days, he displayed his vast wealth, his kingdom, and so on. And with that in mind, probably, why is he having Queen Vashti come in? To display her beauty, for she was lovely to look at. What was the proper way for Vashti to respond? I got a headache. That might have worked, but I doubt it. All right. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I've got a headache. No, probably not. One of the words that I like to talk about, actually, there's two very special words that I like to talk about. One of them is modesty, and the other one is chastity. We don't talk about that in the world much anymore. All right. Modesty and chastity. I think Vashti is showing modesty here. And I think she's showing it in a very proper, a very good way. And the world has one of these two, right? Either modesty or lust. Either modesty or, I want men to look at me, if you're a woman, all right? I want men to look at me because of my sexuality or whatever it might be. We'll look some more about that. So again, when the attendants delivered the king's command, Queen Vashti refused to come. I think because she was being modest. I mean, she didn't want to be put on display. She didn't want to have this. And of course, the king then became very angry and so on. Now, this is in the New Testament, understand, but Jesus talked about this. And one of the reasons why it's fresh in my mind is with the eighth graders, we're talking about contemporary issues. And we talk about dating, and we talk about cohabitation, we talk about marriage, and we talk about divorce, and we talk about LGBTQ, and we talk about all these kinds of issues that are there. This is their first memory work that I have them do. I tell you that anyone looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out, throw it away. They really get into that. You know, these are eighth graders, right? It's better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off, throw it away, same thing, right? Right? How important is it that we not cause someone else to sin? Gouge out your eye, cut off your hand for you not to be causing someone else to sin. I think this is a huge lesson for us today of both men and women that are here. Paul will talk about it. Peter will talk about it in 1 Peter here as he talks to husbands and wives. And again, I think just a pretty significant kind of a thing. Now he says wives, all right, and that's understandable, all right. I kind of like to have this as far as women in general, and especially the younger women, because this world is telling younger women, show off as much flesh as you can, wear as tight of clothes as you can, be as sexually suggestive as you can. Well, the men too, as far as this goes. But here it is. Your beauty should not come from outward adornment. Nothing wrong with braided hair, all right? Peter was not against braided hair, right? All right? Or the wearing of jewelry or fine clothes. Instead, it should be that of the inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is a great worth in God's sight. All right. Again, outward beauty, the world puts significant importance on outward beauty and not much on the inner beauty that's there. The world says, got it, flaunt it, right? And the scriptures say, no, have that inner beauty that's there. So Archie and Edith, she had inner beauty. All right, very good. So back to Esther, or Vashti. All right, let me talk about her for now, all right? So here it is, the king is furious and burned with anger. He is embarrassed, rightfully so, he should have been, okay? Verse 13. Since it was customary for the king to consult experts in matters of law and justice, the fact that he ordered Vashti to come in and parade her beauty before these men who very possibly would have lusted after her and caused them to sin, is that law or justice? Neither one. I thought that was kind of interesting too. And as I thought about that, I thought, people who want to deal with law always have to have the law. How comfortable is that to live that way? I don't know about you, but I need a whole lot of grace. I need a whole lot of forgiveness. I would just as soon not live under the law, but under grace. And that's why I put that visual up here. Yeah, I got the right one up there. Yeah. And so again, what does he do? He wants to find out about the law and about the customs and so on that are there. Well, so, yes. The non-Christian religions are based on what people do, and you think people like that? They're comfortable with that, all right, because it's something that I do. How about the Christian religions that say Jesus plus good works? How about Christian religions that say, if you just pray hard enough, if you just have enough faith, if you just. Legalism, you got it. At least they have Jesus. Do they have Jesus if it's Jesus plus?
No.
Oh, well, all right, Jesus is preached. Which Jesus is preached? The one and only Jesus or the Jesus and? All right, I've made my point, right? Yeah, okay, but yeah, how very, very significant and true that is. Yeah. We are not under law, but under grace, the scriptures tell us. And aren't you glad that we are? Anyway, again, another very contemporary story here as the king comes. Of course, it's natural for people to want to do themselves. I think I know of a 2-year-old that already knows that, right? Like we're born with that. I do it myself, right? Don't tell me what to do. I do it myself. Yeah. All right. And so here we've got, he goes and he consults with experts in matters of law and justice. He spoke with the wise men who understood the times. I think that's interesting too. So are you really wise if you understand the times? What's true wisdom? I got it now. The fear of the Lord. Yeah, all right. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. What's true wisdom? Not understanding the times, but understanding the Bible, the Lord. Yeah. All right. Please understand that. You know, these wise people that understand the times today, are they understanding the scriptures, or are they understanding the psychologists and the psychiatrists and the philosophers and so on? All right. 1 Corinthians chapter 1 talks about God made foolish the wisdom of the wise in order that the foolishness of God might be the true wisdom of God. 1 Corinthians, right? All right, good. So here we got it. Lots of them here. All right. So it was the custom of the king to consult experts in the law of justice and so on. And the queen's conduct will become known to men. All right. So what do they say? All right, here we go. So we've got the names of his wise men who are there. You can pronounce those again if you want to. 7 nobles of Persia and Media who had special access to the king and were highest in the kingdom. We do kind of watch who Biden is putting in office, aren't we? I mean, we are watching very carefully. We watched who Trump put into office and so on. Who are his advisors? All right, we need to be careful about that. And of course, we Christians want Christians in there and are concerned when Christians aren't. I understand. All right, so we got that. But what do they say? According to the law, what must be done to Queen Vashti, he asked. She has not obeyed the command of King Xerxes that the eunuchs have taken to her. Okay. Then the chief guy, Memucan, replied in the presence of the king and the nobles, Queen Vashti has done wrong, not only because the king, but also not only against the king, but also against all the nobles and the people of all the provinces of King Xerxes. Really? She has sinned against all of the men, especially the big leading men. For the queen's conduct will become known to all the women, and so they will despise their husbands and say, King Xerxes commanded Queen Vashti to be brought before him, but she would not come. This very day, the Persian and Median women of all the nobility who have heard about the queen's conduct will respond to all the king's nobles in the same way, and there will be no end of disrespect and discord. It's so good that men don't feel that way anymore. You can throw stuff at them if you want to. That's just fine. Yeah, I understand. Absolutely sarcasm. Yeah. Wow. So, here it is. There will be no end of disrespect and discord. How do you get respect in a marriage? The pinkies. Remember the picture I showed you? Not the obey. You don't get any respect that way. Maybe you get obedience, but what about love and respect? Are they going to? Oh, okay. Are they going to punish the queen and all the women who don't obey their husbands? You did say that, didn't you? Obey their husbands? Yeah, that's there. Well, they're going to punish Queen Vashti and make her an example so that the other ones don't, I suppose. Yeah. One of the things that I thought about, and this is quite a visual here once again, but what do you know about what happened when sin came into the world? Let's go clear back to Genesis chapter 3 with the fall into sin. Let's go clear back to that temptation of the devil with Adam and Eve. What does God say to the woman? Your desire will be to rule over your husband, but he will rule over you. There's no tug of war in marriage, is there? Those of us who are married? All right, all you can do is smile. I got it. Yeah, all right, we know. And what's fascinating to me about this whole thing, the same word, your desire will be for your husband and he will rule over you. He talks to Cain after Cain has murdered Abel. And he's warning Cain about he wants Cain to repent. And what does he say? He says, sin is crouching at your door and its desire is to have you. Well, what was Eve's desire? To have Eden, to have Eve, and Eve to have Adam. What's happening? Xerxes wants to have a woman, all right, and to misuse her and so on. All right, you got it. Again, is this contemporary? Oh my goodness. So what's the edict? Every man should be ruler over his own household. Thank you, Archie Bunker. Right? Or how many others that talk about that? Now, how biblical is that? Not at all. Not biblical at all. Instead, what we've got here is, of course, that Ephesians passage. Every man should not be ruler over his own household. He should love his household. He should love his wife as Christ loved the church. And then I put in that other one, I talk about husbands and wives. I probably need to talk about fathers as well. But, he says in the next chapter, next first verse, fathers, do not exasperate your children. Don't frustrate your children. Do what I say. Don't talk back to me. You obey. You do. That doesn't work so good. I mean, you can get obedience out of them, but what about respect and what about love and so on? Yeah. And then in the world today, too, bosses or coworkers or neighbors or friends or, whatever it might be, is it subjection or is it submission? Is it I'm here to serve you or you're here to serve me? All right. Very much so with Esther and the like. All right. So far, we've got Xerxes, poor Vashti. Vashti now can no longer be the queen. Now she's going to spend the rest of her life as a widow, if you would, never called back into the king's presence, but she'll be fed and clothed and kind of kept away. Never able to marry another man, never able to have a family, never able to do any of this. Terrible, terrible. Well, all right, it might be worth it rather than having to deal with Xerxes and have him misuse and abuse her and so on. Well, yeah, I don't know. That'd be a terrible thing, and because she was being modest, I'll just come back to that good word that's there. All right. So let's introduce another person in here. Chapter 2. Later, when the anger of King Xerxes had subsided, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what he had decreed about her. Then the king's personal attendants proposed, let a search be made for beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint commissioners in every province of his realm to bring all these beautiful girls into the harem at the citadel of Susa. Let them be placed under the care of Hegai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women, and let beauty treatments be given to them. Then let the girl who pleases the king, now isn't this lovely? Let the girl who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti. And this advice appealed to the king, and he followed it. Ugh. Again, look at your sheet that I gave to you. Look on the backside, Esther chapter 2. All right, I'm sorry, I'm not following the questions real closely here. But on the backside again. So after these things, a little history. This undoubtedly refers to Ahasuerus, Xerxes, return after his defeat at Salamis in his war with the Greeks. If for no other reason for that appearance's sake, Ahasuerus felt the need for a queen. While he had many women in his harem, it appears that none of them had the qualifications to serve as a queen. All right, we got some time factor in here, and that's the only reason it's talking about this, all right? So Vashti has been taken away. He's going off to war. He's coming back from war, and now he's thinking, oh, yeah, it's time to get a queen again. All right, so here we got it. And what he's going to do is he's going to get a bunch of teenagers, All right. So these are young women. These are young virgins. These are women who have never been married, obviously. All right. To come in. And if they please him, we'll talk about that. So let's get Mordecai. Now there was in the citadel of Susa a Jew of the tribe of, why is the tribe of Benjamin something that will catch your attention after we've talked about Ezra? Who returned with Ezra? Men and women and families from the tribes of Judah and Benjamin. That's why it's significant here, all right? So what should Mordecai have done? Gone with Ezra to Jerusalem because he was of the tribe of Benjamin, one of these and so on, all right? Interesting. So he's from the tribe of Benjamin named Mordecai, and he's the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish. We'll talk about this a little bit. Just for the fun of it, I Googled Mordecai. And you can do it later on. Test me out and see. But what's the first thing that comes up with Mordecai? Angry Bird. You've heard about Angry Bird, right? So apparently this Mordecai is a blue bird that was in a cartoon strip from 2010 to 2017. I never watched it. I don't know. But boy, Google Mordecai, and you got all kinds of pictures of this bird. And then the second one is a blue jay. Did you know a blue jay is sometimes called a Mordecai? No, me neither. All right. But just fascinating, you know, and it's not the biblical Mordecai, but it's these kinds of Mordecais that are there. And what I thought was interesting is that Bluebird became Angry Bird. You've heard of Angry Bird, right? All right. Yeah. How interesting. Well, that's not the Mordecai we're talking about. But again, if you're telling this story to someone who doesn't know the biblical story, you know, if you're telling this story and you mention Mordecai and they've watched the cartoon, you know, they know about TV and so on, what are they thinking? Angry Bird instead of this person. All right. Interesting. So we've got Mordecai. What do we know? He's a Jew. He's from the tribe of Benjamin. We already talked about that. And that's the book of Ezra, should have gone back with Zerubbabel and the first group that had gone back there and so on. And then I think this is interesting. I think it's the third generation. There's some debate about all of this and so on. But the way that it's easiest for me to read is, so he's the son of Jair, who is the son of Shimei, who is the son of Kish, and Kish was taken into exile. Now, Mordecai could not have been taken into exile because Mordecai would have to be like 100 years old now, because this is probably 50, 60 years into this exile, you know, that's going on here. All right, anyway. So he's probably a third generation that's there. Let's keep going. So we've got verse 5. All right, so the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, who had been carried into exile from Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, among those taken captive with Jehoiachin, the king of Judah. Why is that going to be important? What do you know about the king of Judah and the promise to David and the covenant with David and what the exiles are all worried about and what is going to be the big point? Who is the descendant of David? Who is going to be the king? Who is Jesus going to be coming from, right? So here we got it in Esther. So here he's got, apparently, this is a reminder, who is the king going to be? Mordecai had a cousin named Hadassah. Her other name was Esther, good, whom he had brought up because she had neither father nor mother. The girl, who was also known as Esther, was lovely in form and features, and Mordecai had taken her as his own daughter when her father and mother died. All right, so good. So now we've got these two key people in the story, Mordecai and Esther, who's there, also known as Hadassah. Now, coming to this, we have, how willing was Esther to wanting to be queen of Xerxes? I think it's interesting, the wording that is used here and kind of specific wording that we have. Oh my goodness, I'm way behind on it here. Sorry. All right. When the king's order and edict had been proclaimed, many girls were brought to the citadel. All right. How much say-so do you think they had? And put under the care of Haggai, and Esther also was taken. I think the significance of that is pretty good. My hunch is she would have liked to have married a Jewish man, had a family, raised some children, been like this. But instead, because of her beauty, she is taken. And I put these beauty queens, and so on up here. Granted, they probably do it on their own, all right? But just as far as Esther is concerned, how much did she have a say-so in this? Probably not much. What do you think Mordecai was thinking? Oh no, here they're taking my daughter and they're going to take him to a harem of a heathen king. And I know what they do with harems, I know what the king does with those. I can't imagine that Mordecai is very pleased with that. So let's talk again, as we're getting ready for this comparison, as far as I'd like for you to think, Ruth is a good example, all right, of comparing. I'd like for you to look at Daniel. And just because I'm talking too long, let me get all of these up here and let's talk about all of them. Yep, one more. Okay, good. Daniel, taken against his will as a young man, all right, about 50, 60 years before that under Nebuchadnezzar, all right. Esther, taken against her will. Both of them had a Hebrew name and a Greek name, all right, interesting. What did they say about Daniel? Handsome looking guy, right? Without defect. That's who they would take back there with Nebuchadnezzar. They couldn't have any defect, physical defect, had to be handsome, showing aptitude for learning and so on. Kind of, all right, same thing. Daniel and his 3 friends were trained for 3 years. And what does Esther get? I haven't gotten there yet, but a whole year of beauty treatments. My goodness, all right? 6 years of fragrant oils and 6 months of fragrant oils and 6 months of perfumes to get her ready. Now she was beautiful already, right? All right, that's just interesting. What about the choice food? Daniel says no, but Esther, bless you, but Esther eats it. All right, I'm not gonna make a big deal about that, just interesting. Esther was told by Mordecai, don't reveal your nationality. How about Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Boy, they revealed their identity, didn't they? So some really differences that are there. And Esther won the favor of everyone. Daniel won the favor of everyone. All right. So just kind of interesting. Daniel at the beginning of his captivity, Esther kind of in the middle, and we've got God working in both of these ways. Good. All right, so we've got then verse 8. When the king's order and edict had been proclaimed, many girls were brought to the citadel of Susa, put under the care of Haggai. Esther also was taken to the king's palace and entrusted to Haggai, who had charge of the harem. The girl pleased him, won his favor. Immediately he provided her with her beauty treatments and special food. He assigned to her 7 maids. You see God working here? Boy, Esther's going to be the prettiest. All right, she's got the 7 maids. Selected from the king's palace, moved her and her maids into the best place in the harem. Esther had not revealed her nationality and family background because Mordecai had forbidden her to do so. Why do you think Mordecai told Esther, don't tell them you're a Jew? Why do you think? Fear of being abused or rejected and so on. Conley, would you say? Of being picked on. Yeah. Because they were the exiles. Yeah, they were the outsiders that were there. Sure, John? Of maybe getting some influence with the king as far as keeping it quiet so that he could have some influence with the king and so on. Well, maybe so. Yeah. All right. Was he right in doing it or wrong in doing it? Just say yes. We'll take a look at this. God works irregardless of that. All right, good. All right. And so how interesting. she's not to reveal it. Every day he walked back and forth near the courtyard of the harem to find out how Esther was and what was happening to her. That would be terrible. All right, so Conley and I have Rachel, and some big rich guy comes and takes Rachel away from us in order to be tried out to see if she's sexy enough to be, somebody's husband. And what are Conley and I going to do? Try as best we can to find out, how's Rachel doing? How's she doing? What's happening to her, right? Can you imagine poor Mordecai? All right, so here he is, and he's walking back and forth. He's trying to find out how Esther was, what was happening to her. Now, before a girl's turn came to go in to King Xerxes, she had to complete 12 months of beauty treatments prescribed for the women, 6 months of oil of myrrh, 6 months of perfumes and cosmetics. This is how she would go to the king. Anything she wanted was given to her to take with her from the harem to the king's palace. In the evening, she would go there. In the morning, return to her other part of the harem in the care of Sheshgaz, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the concubines. She would not return to the king unless he was pleased with her and summoned her by name. Now, without getting really specific, what happened during that night? The king took her virginity. The king would take these virgins, girls, and would take their virginity night after night after night after night. And if they pleased the king, he'd call her back. If they didn't please the king, well, sorry, Charlie, I've taken your virginity away. Now you're going to live like Vashti the rest of your life and no husband, no family. This is horrendous. Horrendous. When the turn came for Esther, how terrible. The girl Mordecai had adopted, the daughter of his uncle Abihail, they reminded us of that, to go to the king, she asked for nothing other than what Hegai, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the harem, suggested. Esther was a wise woman. All right? What would you suggest? How can I please the king? What would be the best thing to be doing? Good. And Esther won the favor of everyone who saw her. She was taken to King Xerxes in the royal residence in the 10th month, the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. So there it is. All right, we got this time factor, and the war has been going on before and so on. Now, the king was attracted to Esther more than to any of the other women, and she won his favor and approval more than any of the other virgins. So he set a royal crown on her head, made her queen instead of Vashti, and the king gave a great banquet. Here's another banquet. Esther's banquet for all the nobles and officials. He proclaimed a holiday throughout the provinces and distributed gifts with royal liberality. All right. All right. My time is I got about 30 seconds, I think. We're going to start with Mordecai and this last part because it's a most important part of the story. But this is important also. God has been working in wonderful ways in terrible situations. This is just a terrible situation for poor Esther, for poor Mordecai, for the Jews. But God is working marvelously. Again, what's the point of the story? One of them is when things look the worst, God's working, and he is in charge and doing things there. Good. All right. I must have talked too long. All right, let's close with a prayer, and then we'll pick it up from here next week. Thank you, Lord and Savior Jesus. We know that you are in charge in our heads, but we forget that in our hearts and in our minds. Remind us, Lord, that no matter what the political situation might be, no matter what the world situation might be, whatever our personal situation might be, that you know and that you care, you love about us as you loved and cared about Esther. Terrible things happened, but you still were loving and caring for her and for your people in general. So, Lord Jesus, as we have opportunity, use us in very special ways to serve others and give us your kind of a heart and love for others. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. All right. I better stop recording. There, we stopped recording.